Hello everyone and welcome to the semifinals of the FIDE World Cup 2025. This is the first game we're showing, Wei Yi versus Andrey Esipenko, the other one being Sindarov versus Yakuboev. It's a remarkable game and the tactics featured will be nothing short of magical. So let's dive straight into it and see who of the final four will qualify for the candidates tournament. 3 of the 4 get to qualify. Wei Yi with white opens with pawn to e4. For those of you who don't know, this is only the first classical game. Tomorrow will be the second one. If it's a tie, then they go into tie breaks. So e4 and pawn to e6. What more could we expect from such a fine matchup? The French defense. We have pawn to d4, pawn to d5, knight to c3, and a capture on e4. We have captures, and now knight to f6 can be played, knight to d7, knight to f6 can be played, knight to d7 can be played, bishop to d7 can be played, bishop to e7 can be played. So it's a very versatile way of playing. We have knight to d7. This is the Blackburn defense. Knight to f3 and knight g to f6. We have a captures, and bishop to d3. The pawn is nicely defended by the knight, so you don't have to worry, but often black just counters with pawn to c5, threatening to capture on d4. But not really, because... well, imagine if it was black's move. Black captures on d4, white captures, and then if you capture with the queen, there's a bishop b5 check, and then you lose that queen on d4. So you have to be a little bit careful. But still, we have bishop to e3. D captures is the most played move. Something like captures. Then you put a queen on e2. You avoid the queen trade, bishop g5, castles queenside, and something along those lines. But here we have bishop to e3. Queen to c7, and now queen to e2. Wei Yi burning a little bit of time. You can see that he dropped some 10 minutes. Andrey Esipenko playing instantly. We have pawn to a6, and now it's as if Wei Yi remembered that he already played this game in 2017 in the Rapid Kings tournament against the great Vasily Ivanchuk, where he just castled and that game ended in a draw. Here he goes pawn to h4, which is the top move recommended by the engine, but it's hard to say, or rather, I don't think it's very plausible that this is home preparation, because he burned some 10 minutes getting here and then he spent another 15 just on pawn to h4. But okay, there is a game where bishop to d7 was played. Berkes played it against Anton Korobov. That game ended in a draw. Here we have knight to d5, and it is now as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. As you can see, Andrey just playing instantly. He's not burning any time. And Wei Yi castles queenside. Now the question is, should you capture that bishop on e3? Well, you can capture it, but it could be a little bit dangerous with your king still in the center of the board. So bishop to d7 is played. Sorry, just give me a second. Bishop to d7 is played, but we can also check... what happens if you actually capture it, because why wouldn't you? It seems like, an open board, probably castles on opposite sides of the board. Why wouldn't you grab the bishop pair? Well, the problem is after f captures and let's say c captures on d4, seems like black is doing very well, breaking up white center, but white now doesn't have to recapture. White can just go for knight g5, and the black... will struggle just to find moves here. Just to give you an example, if you try to kick away the knight, knight f7 already wins. Doesn't matter even that the queen is defending that square. You're just going to attack the queen, and once the queen moves, now you go in with queen to h5 or even bishop to g6 with check, king e7, rook captures on d4, and look at that poor king in the middle of the two rooks, the bishop on g6, the queen coming into the game via, whichever means she wants. So it's going to be a very, very quick checkmate. So after castles queenside, we have bishop to d7, king to b1, always useful prophylactic move, knight captures on e3, f captures, and now pawn to f6. So, okay, you got bishop d7, you stop knight g5, now you could castle. We have pawn to g4 by Wei Yi. He says, I'm playing g5 and you do whatever you want to do. So, okay, Andrey castles queenside, g5, we have king to b8 and rook h to f1. Okay, if the position opens up, the rook might find a way all the way to f7, but more likely will not. We have bishop to c8. Now the queen also controls that, and the rook nicely puts pressure on the d file. We have g captures on f6, g captures, and now Wei Yi has to figure out whether rook to g8 is any sort of a problem for him. Maybe rook to g1, you just stop that. But no, he goes pawn to c3. He says, okay, you can have the g file, I don't care. rook to g8 immediately by Andrey, and knight to d2. Again, spending some 12 minutes here, Wei Yi already down to 25 minutes on the clock. We have pawn to f5, making sure that that pawn remains on e3, knight to b3, and rook to g4, putting pressure on the h4 pawn, h5, and rook to h4. Okay, the pawn is nicely defended, but that queen on c7, the potential of rook coming to h2, you have to be a little bit careful. So knight c5, we have bishop captures on c5, d captures, and queen captures on c5. You have to win back your material because the immediate rook h2 isn't really all that impressive. You can just block with rook to f2. So queen captures on c5. We have rook to f4, offering a trade of rooks, but rook to h3, going after the e3 pawn. And rook to d4. Now, I watched the live coverage. Judith Polgar was the main commentator for the event, and she talked about how rook to g8 will be played here. There's no doubt about that. But that rook captures on d4 also should be explored, because rook captures on d4 is indeed the top move recommended by the engine, and she always analyzes without the engine. So another insight in what a great player she is, because she just says, imagine the rooks off the board and black is better. Yeah, you know, she can see that in an instant. Even by capturing and improving white's pawn structure, black should still be better. Now queen d6, rook to h2 can be played. Yes, you do have a weak e6 pawn, but the bishop is nicely defending. Now you can go queen f4 with rook h2, rook e3. All of these possibilities, black is the one with more to do here, so to say. But as she predicted, rook to g8 was played by Wei Yi, and now pawn to e4. This is by far the best, because you have to get rid of that weak pawn. Otherwise, your position is just very sterile. So pawn to e4, and now f captures on e4. Again, worth exploring is queen to c7, because now you have the other rook, the potential of the other rook joining the second rank, or rather, as we like to say, promote both of your rooks into pigs. But after, let's say, captures and rook h2, let's say queen to e3, rook g to g2 looks incredible. But believe it or not, rook b4, and now look at this, it goes very long. a5, you attack the rook, rook to b5, bishop d7, you attack the rook again. And now, not rook to b6, as you might imagine, because then rook g3 just wins. Instead, rook c5. You actually allow rook captures on b2. I mean, this is just incredible stuff. Rook captures king c1, and now it's actually white who's winning. There's no way to exploit this. Your queen is hanging, and, well, just rook captures on a5 and queen a7 will win the game for white. And if you try to, you know, somehow hold on, let's say queen to d6, rook captures, you can play king to c7, but still f6. I mean, there's a passed pawn now, black 0 threats, and it looks scary, definitely, but yeah, I mean, if you want to calculate, definitely the way to do it. So while it is the top move recommended by the engine, as you can see, it can go very wrong. So f captures on e4 from Wei Yi, and queen captures on e4. They're already very low on time, so you can't even afford a lot to calculate. And now you could play the safe queen f5 to get the queens off the board, but we have queen captures on h5, grabbing a pawn. Wei Yi is now down a pawn, which means that if material comes off the board, that passed h-pawn and the passed e-pawn will be serious trouble. And here Wei Yi is very, very close to getting in trouble, but he finds the absolute best move, probably the one I'm going to feature in the thumbnail, and that is, we can even slow motion it. Bishop captures on a6. Look at this beauty. And you might think, what is this? What sorcery is this? Well, the point is, of course, if the bishop is captured, then rook b4 and you win the game. Doesn't really matter how you play it. The best would be to just give up the queen, but you're still getting checkmated. And if let's say king to a7, there's rook d7 check. Disgusting. Getting the bishop off of defending that b7 pawn, and there's really nothing more you can do. Either bishop to b7 and then queen b7 checkmate, or you accept and then queen to b7 is checkmate. So you cannot accept this. So pawn to e5 is played, putting pressure on the rook while still pressuring the bishop. And now there is only one way for Wei Yi to survive this game, and he finds it. Rook to d8. Imagine if rook b4, you put pressure on that b7 pawn. I'm sure you forgot about our good friend the rook hanging on d1, and this would just be checkmate. So after e5, rook to d8, only way to play. Rook captures on d8, rook captures on d8, and here again, you could play some rook h1, you could capture the bishop. We can even show what happens if you capture the bishop, because now queen to b4 check. It is a draw, but you have to, calculate properly, although by properly, I mean it's very easy, and even your uncle could do it. King to b7, and now you just go queen b4 check, and we have a repetition because that bishop on c8 would hang, or you would get checkmated. So after rook captures on d8, Andrey finds the absolute best king to a7. From a computer standpoint, it's all the same, because if it's a draw, but for a human, the other line, everything you play is a draw, and in this particular line, only one line does not lose the game for Wei Yi. Maybe not the first one you think of, because there are so many threats from Andrey. Would you survive this position? Feel free to pause the video and try to find the only move that doesn't lose the game on the spot while I give you a couple of seconds. Believe it or not, it is queen to a4. That is the only way to continue this game, and if you don't find it, you're just gone. And it's so beautiful. You cover the d1 square, so that's important. Also, the rook covers it, so that's very nice. And if black starts checking, let's say rook h1 check, king to c2, no more useful checks. For example, if queen to h2 check, you run into an incredible bishop to e2, a counter check. Also, you're blocking the check with the bishop. King to b8, and now look at this. Queen c4, threatening a win on the spot, and it seems like queen h3 holds, but look at this disgustingly beautiful bishop to g4. The bishop is pinned, the queen cannot go anywhere, and that's it. Next move, you just capture and checkmate the black king. So incredible stuff. You do have one check, but after king b3, it's all the same. So after queen to a4, b captures on a6. It had to be played, and now Wei Yi finishes it off by sacrificing even the rook. Rook to d7 check, and you don't have to capture it, although it doesn't help if you don't. For example, if you go king to b8, then queen b3 check is the only move that wins, but surely it would be found. And after king to a8, queen to d5 check, king to b8, queen to d6 check, king to a8, queen to c6 check, and now, of course, after king b8, queen to c7, king a8, and queen to a7 will be checkmate. And if you don't want to go king to b8, if you want to block with the bishop, then again, you just sacrifice the rook. Captures, queen to d7, and you have a draw by perpetual checking, because if you go too far down the board, let's say king b5 and queen d5, and now you go king a4, well, then it's b3 check, king a3, and now whatever you want, let's say queen a5, and this will be checkmate. So after rook to d7, Esipenko captured, bishop captures on d7, king captures and king b6, and he was in this position on move 33 that Wei Yi and Andrey Esipenko agreed to a draw, as there is nothing more to be done here. Again, it's the same setup. If you go too far down the board, a4, then b3 check, and that's it. King to a3, even queen to d6 is a beautiful checkmate. So it was a very, very close. Wei Yi had to find some unique moves. He played some bold chess, pushing that g4, g5, but then it seems like Esipenko read through it all, and then he was on the counter, and then when that crucial moment presented itself for Wei Yi to secure those 3 brilliancies just to hold the draw, he delivered. So yeah, brilliant game by both of them. The end result, I would say, is fair, and we'll see what happens in the next one, where Esipenko will have the white pieces and Wei Yi will. We'll see. Either he's going to play something solid, or we're going to see a Wei Yi game. So I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to cover the other game as well, so stay tuned for that. I would like to thank Michal Baisalia, Andrea Sorcinelli, Eddie Sfer, Brian Pratt, and David Gasparian for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you still haven't, first link in the description below, download Lotus Chess and prepare for every game to play the best possible chess in the most active way possible. Try it out. It's amazing. See you soon.